When I got started at New Masters Academy, I decided to take the classes in order, but there was one that was at the very end of the Drawing Foundations module. I was so looking forward to take it that I bought all of the materials and I watched a few lessons and started doing the assignments. And at this point, I realized that it was above my skill level, so I put it aside, but for a very long time I've been looking forward to this class, and when I finally arrived, it's been one of my favorite classes, and I'm very excited to share with you my review of Introduction to Inking with Miles Yoshida. If it's your first time here, my name is Julie. I've been studying art with New Masters Academy for a year and a half, and in this video I'm going to share everything about the Introduction to Inking class, the assignments, the materials, what we touched on week to week, and what my main takeaways are from this class. I hope that if you've been considering taking it, this is going to give you a lot of information about the class, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the comments. I just want to thank New Masters Academy for their support. I've been making videos about them since I started this channel because it is a big part of my artistic journey, and I'm very grateful to them for supporting my videos. For this class, you will need, or you can replace it or do with what you have, it's not an absolute requirement, but they call for a ballpoint pen, a technical pen, a dip pen, brushes, a brush pen, some ink of course, a plastic cup, paper towel, a brush cleaner to take care of your brushes, a plastic egg container that is completely optional, it's just to contain your ink and different ink dilutions. If you live in a country where eggs come in plastic containers, this is very useful. Here in France we don't have this, it's always cardboard containers, and you don't put ink in a cardboard container, that would be stupid. You're going to need folder clips, a mechanical graphite pencil, a plastic eraser, a hacky brush, some masking tape, watercolor paint, just one tube that you need for toning the paper, some white gouache, a sketchbook, and some watercolor paper for the final project that is on more expensive paper because it is a larger drawing. So that's the materials. I've been using the recommended materials, most of them. The brand isn't that important, and as usual with New Masters Academy you can substitute, and you are encouraged to substitute with whatever is most accessible to you. So if a specific brand or a specific type of paper isn't easily available in your country, or it is extremely expensive, you should substitute it for something that is more accessible to you. I've been using mostly the same materials as I saw in the videos because everything was fairly accessible and it wasn't completely overpriced in France. So maybe from the materials list you can already tell that there is one aspect in which I found this class very different from other inking classes that I had been taking or other inking tutorials that I saw on YouTube. I won't be able to give you an in-depth comparison between classes the same way that I can't give you an in-depth comparison between art schools because I am only a student at New Masters Academy. I have taken a few classes on other platforms previously, and yeah, I've taken a few, but I've been mainly studying with New Masters Academy. But one of the few courses that I took was an inking class. It was on Domestika, and I'm not going to say anything bad about it, so I can actually leave a link in the description. I think the instructor was David Morales. I'm not sure about the family name, but it was about sketchbooking and making what he calls, I think, a life journal. I think the class was in Spanish, and I watched it with French captions. But yeah, it is about making an illustrated journal using mostly the hatching technique, and he is using technical pens. This class was focused on one inking tool and one inking style, I would say, and what made the Introduction to Inking class so special for me and that I wasn't necessarily expecting was that it touches on a variety of inking tools from ballpoint pen to brush, and like this isn't the brush that we use for the class because it's too wide, but like just an actual brush that you dip in ink, very traditional, very old school, And so you explore a variety of materials and a variety of techniques and even subject matters and all of this in ink. But yeah, it was unexpected for me to use brushes and to use such different tools, but in that sense it is really an introduction to inking and meant to expose you to very, very different tools, and it's something that I loved about the class. I will get back to it in my main takeaways. But yeah, so you use a lot of different ink mediums and you explore a lot of different subject matters. It is a 12 weeks class. At New Masters Academy, they call a lesson a week. So when I say 12 weeks, you can take it in much less time or you can take it in much more time, whatever pace works for you. But when I say a week, it is basically a lesson. So each week focuses on different things. For the first couple weeks, you do a lot of swatches and a lot of hatching with all of your materials, and it is about gaining some muscle memory and getting to know your materials. So you even do some scribble pages, just making a mess with your materials, but just get to know your ink, get to know your paper, get to know your ballpoint, your dip pen, your brushes, and all of the different marks that they are able to make. It is also about value and being able to control your hatching to represent different values. So you make value scales and you also try curvilinear hatching as opposed to straight hatching. That was again something different from this class. I had taken the other class on Domestica that I talked about that was very different, and I don't want to compare them necessarily because it isn't the same purpose. But that was focusing on one way of hatching, and every time I've seen a tutorial on YouTube, it was never as broad as this class was. And one thing that I hadn't seen touched as much as it was in this class is curvilinear hatching. And Miles talks about making curves and curving your hatching a lot in this class, and it's a big takeaway for me. Again, I will probably talk about it later on, but so in this first couple weeks you also do different types of hatching: straight, curvilinear, trying different values, all of your materials. These are 2 heavy weeks. If you are the kind of person who finds this tedious, maybe the first couple weeks are going to feel long. Personally, I find these kinds of exercises very meditative, and I take a lot of joy out of this because it's a very low pressure exercise. It's just making marks on paper and focusing on one mark at a time, and because you're focusing on one mark at a time, it takes a lot of time, but it's also a very nice way to, for me, just make marks on paper, just spend time with my materials. And I love drawing, I love making marks, and so I am having a good time without the pressure of making something beautiful, just focusing on one line at a time and trying to make it as clean, as fluid as possible, thinking about my breathing, my posture, the way my body is moving. I take a lot of enjoyment out of this, so I really enjoyed this first couple weeks. You also do a little bit of drawing. He goes over geometric forms. So when I say geometric form, I mean a volume, a solid thing, so a sphere, as opposed to a circle, something that is 3-dimensional. So you do a lot of geometric forms and you hatch over them with different materials. Again, you want to use as many different materials as possible, so you make a page in ballpoint, a page in dip pen, a page with a brush. And I think one of the assignments was also to make a geometrical still life, which again, I had a lot of fun with it. I know that some people find making these kinds of still lives very tedious because it is a typical assignment and not something that you find inspiring to look at. Probably I don't find this especially inspiring. When I see a cube, I'm not like, wow, this is such a beautiful cube, I want to paint it. I don't find cube especially inspiring, but I enjoy the exercise of drawing a cube and trying to make it as beautiful, as true, as naturalistic, and as clean as I possibly can. I take joy out of this, so I loved the first couple weeks. Week 3 is another common exercise, but it is the first time that you draw in this class, and it is to make a master study. It's not a quick study like the ones I've been doing in the sketchbook journey class that I made a video about as well. I will leave a link if you want to check it out later. It is not these kinds of studies. This time it is a very involved, careful, meticulous study of an ink drawing, because you want to copy it stroke by stroke. The point of this is to be able to analyze how the master, because you're doing a master study, you're not doing anyone study. You want to study work that is recognized for its quality. It doesn't have to be Michelangelo or Leonardo, but it has to be someone whose skill is recognized, basically. So you want to see how the master used ink to solve some problems, their use of texture, how they hatched, how their lines tapered or didn't taper, and you want to copy this as faithfully as you can. It's been a difficult week for me. I decided to use a dip pen because it is a tool that I hadn't used previously, and that I think it is the tool that I thought the class was going to be about, and it's really not about any specific tool. But yeah, this was the one that I wanted to practice with. I definitely didn't want to practice with the fine liner pens because it's not my favorite, and I find it easier to handle than a dip pen, and so I wanted to work with the more advanced tool as much as possible. So I focused on the dip pen and the brushes for this class, but you don't have to. You could use, I believe, I'm not 100% sure because I don't remember the specific wording of every assignment, but yeah, you can choose which materials you want, but you're encouraged to explore as many different ones as possible. Anyway, I chose the dip pen and I tried different inks, different papers, and I had a hard time finding the ink paper nib combination that didn't work too bad, and in the end I still felt like I wasn't able to get the exact lines that I wanted to get, which makes complete sense because I am a student and I am making a master copy. So if I was able to make these lines, I would be making them and I wouldn't be taking this class, probably. So I had a hard time. I made a decent study. I submitted it for feedback as I did with all of my weeks, all of my assignments, and it passed, but I wasn't super happy about it. Week 4 is the first real piece that you make, and it is a still life drawing. I had a difficult time with this one because it was my first ink drawing, really. It was my first time making a full, resolved, finished drawing in ink, and I had expectations for myself and for my drawing that were not realistic, and while I was drawing this one, I realized that it wasn't realistic and that I really didn't know what I was doing, and I had this, what was for me a big realization, and that is probably going to sound very simple to you. I already shared it in one of my art journals, but that was that I don't have experience, and so I can only make guesses about which effect is going to happen with each stroke that I make, each decision that I make, each texture decision that I make, each ink wash that I apply. I can only guess what it's going to look like in the end, but I don't have the experience of what it looks like because I haven't done it yet. I don't have previous artworks to remember, to recall, to help guide my current decisions, and so everything is new and everything is difficult and I don't know what I'm doing. That was pretty much my mindset, and it was for me difficult to accept. I mean, it was holding me back and it was making me procrastinate on the assignments because I wanted to be able to make something perfect. And once I realized this, and that I couldn't be in full control because I didn't have the experience, and getting the experience was the point of the assignments, it made it a lot easier to accept it and to move forward, and to, because I was conscious of what I was doing, it was just easier, and this happened during this assignment, so for me that was a turning point for the class. And it doesn't have anything to do with the specific assignment itself. It was just a realization that I had while I was doing this. Week 5 was my favorite week of the class. It is again a heavy week because you have to make a lot of different drawings, but each of them is fairly quick. So by fairly quick, I mean definitely less than an hour and probably around 13 minutes per drawing. But you have to draw, if I remember correctly, 8 hands. So it's your own hand that you draw from life. It is important in this assignment that you draw your hand from life. So you use a mirror to be able to see it from different angles, and you're going to draw your own hand with different materials. And I believe it is 8 because you have to make 2 hands with a dip pen, 2 hands with a ballpoint, 2 hands with a technical pen or fine liner pen, and finally 2 hands with brush. And I just loved this assignment. I really enjoyed drawing hands, and I enjoyed being able to explore different materials. I did this in my sketchbook. My least favorite ones are the fine liner pen hands, and I really enjoyed the ballpoint ones as I was expecting. I really like drawing with a ballpoint pen because it is ink, so you have some strength, some contrast and intensity with the paper, but at the same time it is close to a pencil in the sense that you get this pressure sensitivity, and by varying your pressure on the paper you're able to get different intensities, which is similar to how you use a pencil. So I really enjoy the ballpoint, and I had surprising results with the brush. It was my first time, I think, drawing in ink with a brush, or even drawing with a brush rather than painting, and I really enjoyed my brush hands that I did for this assignment. I didn't use pure black ink, but instead I used ink dilutions, which is another big takeaway for me from this class, that you don't have to use black ink all the time, and working with dilutions opened up so many possibilities for me and made the medium a lot more approachable, because you don't have to work at full intensity all the time, but also it gave this medium a lot more subtlety and delicateness, which is something that I am after in my work. I enjoy having more nuances than just black and white, and yeah, for me it's a big takeaway, and it is one of the reasons why I think I enjoy these hands drawings so much, because I was using dilutions and I really like how they turned out. Weeks 6 and 7 have the same subject matter, so for each of these weeks we do a drawing of an animal, but the difference is that for week 6 we use a dip pen, and for week 7 we use a brush. So in the demonstration in week 6, Miles is drawing a cat, his cat, who is adorable, and week 7 he's drawing a tiger, who is not his tiger, of course. I mean, could be, but it's not. I drew a cat for week 6 and a flamingo for week 7, and I'm going to show it to you because I told you that I was going to share everything, but I really dislike this drawing. I consider it a bad drawing. I don't like how it turned out. It has mistakes that they're kind of standard mistakes for me. It's what I tend to do when I don't pay attention to doing the opposite. So my values feel a bit broken, and it's a bit unclear, and I don't like this drawing. I probably didn't choose the best photo reference, as the teacher assistant pointed out because I submitted for video tutoring sessions for this class. For most of the class I had video sessions, and the TA was drawing over my assignment and giving me in-depth feedback, and he pointed out that this probably wasn't the best photo reference, but it was something important to learn, to pay a lot of attention to the photo reference that I chose. Anyway, I won't talk too much about this one because I really don't like it. The flamingo I was very happy about. So this one is done with a brush, and it felt closer to a painting rather than a drawing. because I used ink dilutions and I was playing with edge quality the same way that I would with watercolor, which is something that I really enjoy doing, and I was familiar with this technique because of watercolor. I had some experience with it, so I really loved applying this to ink that doesn't behave exactly the same, but yeah, loved the process. I was very happy with the result until I got feedback on it, and the TA pointed out that I had forgotten to give the flamingo a cast shadow. I totally intended to paint the shadow and I totally forgot about it, so that's a bit of a stupid mistake that I did. But again, it is a learning opportunity and something to remember to take a look at my drawing at the end and make sure that everything is in there. Weeks 8 and 9 are again about the same subject matter, but you use different tools. So there are both about landscapes. More specifically, week 8 is about a cityscape and you use a ballpoint pen. And week 9 is about a landscape, a countryside landscape, and you use a brush. If I remember correctly, I think you have to use wash and brush for week 9. For both of these, I worked from photo references, my own photo references, because landscapes and cityscapes are really my least favorite thing to draw. I don't enjoy drawing environments as much as isolated subjects, and I especially enjoy drawing an isolated subject without context. I like just a thing on the background of the paper, and yeah, I'm not into environments. I'm not really drawn to them in artwork. I mean, I can appreciate them, but it's not my main focus, and in my own art I don't enjoy doing it, and I'm also not the best at it. So I had some classes on landscape drawing and they were not my favorites, and this I was not looking forward to. So I decided to use my own photo references because at least I had something inspiring to work from. These were images that I took myself and that I liked. So for week 8 I made a drawing of a view of my city, and it is a very weird perspective because it is an old part of the city. It dates back to the Renaissance, and I'm not sure how these exact stairs, how old they are, but they're old and they're not straight by any means, and none of the streets are straight, and it is deep. We look down on the city, so the perspective is very unusual, and it wasn't perfect in my drawing, but I focused a lot on mark making and texture with the ballpoint and giving different textures along with different values to each part of the image. That was my main focus for this assignment, and it's not my favorite drawing. I'm not too unhappy about how it turned out because I think I did my best. I think it is the best I could do, and I got very positive feedback, but yeah, it's not my favorite. And same thing for week 9. I was even less looking forward to it, but I chose a picture that I took in the mountains. It was taken in November last year, and it was a very moody scene with some atmospheric perspective, but that's not the word that I'm looking for. It was snowing, and so everything was very soft and gray, and some of the mountains are disappearing into the sky because of the very white cloudy sky and the very white snow on the mountains, and I really liked that. I did my best, got positive feedback on the assignment. It's again not my favorite drawing and not my favorite subject matter, and I am happy about this assignment in the sense that I recognize that it is my best, and I didn't know that I was able to do it because it is not a subject matter that I go to naturally. And the last 3 weeks of the class, so weeks 10, 11, and 12, are all about the same drawing. So you submit the same piece at different stages of completion. So the assignment is to draw a self-portrait from life, which is difficult. I considered using a photo. I had never drawn a self-portrait from life, and I knew that it was going to span over several days, just if anything, because I would have to submit and wait for feedback and watch the rest of the lessons and submit at a different stage. So it wasn't going to happen all at once. So I had to think about my setup, my lighting for drawing this from life. And of course, my hair changed and I wasn't wearing the same clothes for the entire week that I was working on it. And it came with a lot of challenges. One of them being that I am wearing glasses. That's not easy to draw because it sets the perspective in a very strict way. You can't cheat with it. And it is man-made, so it is very round and straight, and you're expecting a certain shape, and if it deviates from this shape in even a slight way, it's very obvious to us. Whereas my face, if you know me, you can tell that there isn't a perfect likeness, but it's still, I'm looking at it right now because it is on my wall, it's still a human face. So yeah, anyway, big project, and for me it was also the final project of the entire Drawing Foundations module that I had been taking for a year and a half with feedback, and I wanted to end on something nice, so I had some pressure on myself. This is a project that you do on toned paper, and I will leave a link in the description below to the part of the class where Miles Yoshida goes over how to tone your paper, because it is an extract that New Masters Academy put for free on their YouTube channel, so definitely check it out if you're curious about the class, because you will be able to see immediately if his teaching style works for you. It was a long drawing. It was not my first self-portrait, but it's always a bit challenging because you are afraid to look a certain way, you would like to look a certain way, you want to modify some things, and at the same time you want to be true to what you see, but you know you're going to be biased because it's yourself. And yeah, a lot of things are happening with a self-portrait that you are conscious of or not conscious of, and it is always a very interesting exercise. I enjoyed working on it. It was a long work. I don't remember how many hours exactly, but yeah, definitely a long work that I took my time with because ink can't be erased, and I submitted it for video tutoring every time. So I felt it was a scary work because, as I said, I wanted to end on something that I would be proud of, and I wanted to make a very nice self-portrait. But at the same time, I knew that I was able to get help from the TA, and I had some questions about how it was evolving, and video feedback was very helpful for me at this point. And if you are taking a class at New Masters Academy with feedback and you submit your assignments, and you have at different points an assignment that is in 2 parts or in 3 parts, maybe it's a good time to use video tutoring rather than written feedback to just get more out of these more involved assignments. I think, for me at least, it was very useful with this one, and I'm glad I took it. What I take away from the class is not a mastery of ink. I don't feel like I mastered inking by any means, but I made a lot of progress with a lot of different mediums for sure. I can see it from the first swatches that I did, but also the swatches that I did when I first took the class a long time ago. I made progress, but I didn't master the medium. That's not, I think, the point of the class. The point is to give you a lot of very general but deep and useful information about inking, how to set your space up, how to care for your materials, how to make marks with different materials. It's always the same medium ink, but different tools with ink. So I gained this exposure that was very valuable for me, and that showed me that fine liner pens, I thought I didn't like them. I still don't like them, but brush, I had never really considered it as a drawing tool, and I really enjoyed it, so it's something that I want to explore more in the future. It also showed me that you don't have to work with one ink dilution and you don't have to work with one tool, but you can use your ink in different dilutions and with different tools within the same piece, which is maybe obvious to you, but for some reason I hadn't considered. I didn't consider this to be an option, and now I feel more open-minded about the different ways to use ink and to apply it even within one artwork. Another thing I gained is a deep appreciation for the medium, because I had this idea in my head of the kind of marks that I thought I was able to do, I would be able to do, and it turned out that I wasn't necessarily that. Yeah, it was more difficult than I was thinking, and I gained a lot of appreciation for people who have mastered inking and who are able to get long fluid lines or the illusion of long fluid lines and curves in ink, because I have experienced the difficulty of it myself and I appreciate it a lot more now. I also gained a lot of patience, and that was something that I really enjoyed about this class, and I talked about it in my art journals, that it's a class that really encourages you to slow down and to think about one mark at a time and try to make it as good as you possibly can. It's not about being fast and getting to a result quickly. It's not about sketching. It's really about drawing and taking the time to make the best mark you possibly can. And for me, it was deeply enjoyable. I know it's probably not going to be as enjoyable for everyone. Maybe it's going to be more of a challenge for you. For me, it was getting back to what is the most natural and enjoyable for me. I just had a great time with the class, and if you want to take it, I really hope that you enjoy it as much as I did. It's definitely one of my favorite classes at New Masters Academy that I took, and one of my favorite classes from the Drawing Foundations module. If you're curious about classes at New Masters Academy, you can check out my video about Sketchbook Journey and my playlist about New Masters Academy. Thank you very much for watching, stay creative, and I will see you in the next one.